So I am joined today once again by Caleb Dardick, Projects Administrator for the Nevada County Executive Office. Thanks for joining us again today, Caleb.
Good morning, Cole. It's my pleasure to be here.
So there were some somewhat big announcements at Tuesday's Board of Supervisors meeting, specifically having to do with the American Rescue Plan Act funding and where some of those funds are going to go. Can you give us a little bit of a breakdown of what's going on with all of that funding?
Yes, I'd be happy to. Yeah, as you mentioned, on Tuesday, the Board of Supervisors unanimously approved allocating a full 30% of the county's American Rescue Plan Act funds. That's, I think, the biggest percent of any North State county. I haven't heard anything even comparable. And we're really proud to do that because we know that our local economy has really taken a hit. Everyone has had an impact, some much worse than others. Some have been shuttered. Some have really been getting by, really bootstrapping it for the past year. So we recognize that relief is still needed, but even more so at this point, 14 months later, we need a exit ramp from this pandemic so that we can focus on recovery and resiliency. And I believe these funds will be are positioned to make a difference. So just so your listeners or viewers understand, the county got a direct payment from the federal government of $19.3 million. That's going to come in two packages, 50% next month, and then the balance a year later. So basically out of 19 million, we got about 8.5, or I guess 9.5, coming this year. The board allocated up to 5.8 million, and we're going to probably use most of that in the first year because we prioritize getting money out into the community, helping the small businesses. The Treasury guidelines, the US Department of Treasury guidelines have not been published, so we can't define every aspect of how the money goes out until we know the rules. But the big broad rules are it's about recovery, it's about loss, and it's about building resiliency moving forward. So we think we're on the right track. We came up and the board approved 4 grant programs. And each of these, the idea is, can we leverage those dollars? Can we make them go further? And can we find a way that it's going to invest, that these monies can invest in the local economy? So the first piece we want is to put $2 million out to the community serving organizations, facilities, programs in our community that have been hard hit and delivering services to families, to seniors, to veterans, to all the different constituencies that have really struggled during this period. So we think that that will be a good investment. We're suggesting macro grants as sort of a buzzword, but up to $100,000. And we will develop the program and the requirements over the next month and then get those out into the community. Probably familiar to many is our Nevada County Relief Fund. We've been a public-private partnership. The community has raised over $600,000 in small donations to date. The county, Truckee, and the cities have contributed the balance, so we're a little over 1.3 million. We're going to add another $250,000 to that, targeted to small businesses countywide, and they can apply for micro grants up to $5,000. So that will be up and running probably within a month as well. And then new is we're partnering with the Sierra Business Council, the county's economic development partner. They have a resilience loan fund, which is basically a very low interest, 2% revolving loan program. We're going to put $250,000 into that as well. And that really provides access to easy money that people can borrow at a very low rate and get going. And this is really important for businesses that are maybe very new, don't have relationships with banks. It's a little harder for them to get money. Many women-owned businesses fall into this category. And we've seen I think 98% payback. And really this is for getting inventory and getting back up and running again. So we think that between the $2 million getting out into our community serving programs, the $250,000 direct into small businesses as micro grants, and $250,000 set aside as low interest loans, that is something that can get relief and recovery underway quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. And it sounds like from listening to the meeting and the presentation that happened there that still a lot of this is in flux, and there's going to be new programs coming along either from the federal government or from you guys or whatnot. And there's still a fair bit of money left to be allocated. Do you have plans for any of that at this point, or are you just kind of waiting still, like you said, to see what the rules are going to be and kind of see what comes down the pipe?
We have some ideas already. There's, of the 5.8 million, that just accounted for 2.5. So the next 2.5 million, up to 2.5 million, we see as a fund for infrastructure improvements that will bolster economic development. So many times, if you'll see a project and it's like a great idea, but they don't have that initial funding to do the first feasibility study, or they run into expenses around environmental review, that becomes a blockade. And so what we want to be able to do is create a fund that would help innovators, with exciting and important economic development projects move through those barriers. So we're not talking about spending all the money to actually finance a project soup to nuts, but if you got a champion with a great vision that's going to bolster the economy, create jobs, advance some of our board priorities for the community like broadband, can we use this money to leverage more money? So we're going to create a fund where people can apply for match dollars, for special funds, studies, things that'll keep things going, sort of what we're calling the next phase of infrastructure planning with it. That's designing, permitting, whatever it means to make a project shovel ready, because we're anticipating, and we saw this back in 2008 with the President Obama's ARRA money, was that the projects that were funded with federal dollars were the ones that were quote unquote shovel ready. That means they were designed, they were permitted, they were basically ready to go, but for, the capital money. And that's what we want to encourage. We want to get that pipeline for housing, for retail, for broadband, for wildfire mitigation, any number of large scale projects that we know we need in this community. Let's use some of this money now to advance the agenda and make some progress. So when the larger dollars come, presumably if the Congress determines, we want to make sure that Nevada County says, hey, we're ready, and that this money doesn't pass us by to another community that might be readier. So that's where we're thinking in terms of that next 2.5 million. That leaves 800,000. And again, these numbers can move based on board priorities. We're going to bring everything will come back to the board, every criteria, every proposal, they'll get to decide how the money is ultimately used, and there'll be plenty of time for feedback and input from the community. But the last balance at this point, 800,000, we want to see that put aside for visitor safety at outdoor recreation destinations, because we all understand there's an economic development connection to recreation. Many of us moved here, right? And relocated our families and our jobs so we could have access to trails and rivers and lakes and the mountains for skiing. So, recreation, the economy, our quality of life are very closely connected. But what we've seen over the years, and especially last year with COVID, was this huge influx of users to our trailheads, to our river crossings, where quite frankly, we have not invested over time in the infrastructure, where we don't have adequate parking, where we don't have adequate sanitation, where we don't have emergency call boxes and the type of safety things that are needed. So we think that this is, again, another fund that can be leveraged in partnership, that there's federal and state monies that could benefit parks and trails and all these wonderful amenities, and that we would have this source of funds that could, again, leverage even greater and more important projects that the community has wanted for a long time and recognizes, investment is overdue. And finally, we have an opportunity maybe to help, again, not pay for the whole thing because the money would go very quickly, but use strategic dollars to leverage more dollars, private sector, public sector partnerships that will create, the type, enhance the amenities that we all love and use every day.
Yeah, gotcha. Yeah, all of that sounds like great ideas, and it sounds like you guys have put a lot of thought and effort into trying to figure out how to best use this. Um, One of the other things you touched on there was infrastructure and particularly broadband. Also at the meeting, there was some funding put aside for some broadband. Now, this isn't part of the American Rescue Plan funding, but can you tell us a little bit about that decision and what's going on with that?
Absolutely. So broadband is a standalone objective for the Board of Supervisors this year. It's always been an objective of the county, and it's usually been included in economic development. The board broke it out this year in January as a way to tell the staff in the community, we're going to make broadband a major priority. And they did that by setting aside $500,000 to fund the second round of what we call the Last Mile Broadband Grant Program. This program has been in existence since 2019 and has funded a few projects up till now, but not with this, not without so many resources. So we solicited applications back in January. We got a number of them, and the 4 best ones we got approved using the $500,000 on Tuesday. We're very excited. First of all, the county's $500,000 is leveraging $4 million in private investment. So that already is a great, return on investment, as they say. We believe that, based on the proposals that we've been presented, and there's 4, 3 in West County, 1 in East County, that up to 444 households or 440 households will be connected to the internet. They're a mix of underground fiber, overhead fiber, and wireless technology. So depending on the terrain, depending on the community, we're seeing different. But what we are asking of this last mile, and for people who aren't familiar with last mile, that refers to the final leg connecting a broadband service providers to the actual house. And, for example, we have a huge so-called middle mile, that runs through the middle of Nevada County, but many people haven't tapped into that. So these are projects, in some cases tap into that and then expand the network. All of our projects had to have at least a 50% match, which they all did. All of the projects have to be scalable and replicable, meaning that they can grow and be placed. The same model should work in other parts of the county. Because as cool as 440 households is, ask your friends, how many people do you personally know who either have poor or no internet? So we have a big hurdle as a community. This is obviously key, if you're going to work from home, if you distance learning for kids, telemedicine for seniors and others with health issues, the internet is no longer a nice to have. It's a need to have. It's like any other utility like water and power. So this is the county's investment to keep spurring innovation and growth. And yeah, very excited to see this commitment and to see so many great local providers step forward with their innovative ideas. I mean, we can figure this out here in the foothills.
Yeah, that's going to be great. That's also one I'm very excited about because, as you said, I mean, I have pretty terrible internet at my house, and I know everybody that I know that lives around me or anywhere in the county it's just always a struggle to get some solid internet. So that sounds amazing.
Yeah, and it's no laughing matter, if it's a health issue or you got kids at home and you don't, and you're trying to do a conference call with a major, client. I mean, this is urgent, and this is one that we're going to keep pushing on, and hopefully, again, position Nevada County to be ready and say, we know how to do it. We have these models that work. Give us more funding. We'll scale them out further. So, yeah, appreciate your interest in that.
So you were also talking a little bit off air about some of the other more immediate things that people can do, like PPE availability things, and also what can the community or businesses do to leverage some of that stuff right now?
Absolutely. I think in the county as a whole and in the CEO's office in particular, we've really been committed since the beginning of the pandemic to being a clearinghouse for information, resources, and support for the business community, nonprofit community. And so we have been hosting for a while it was weekly, it's now monthly public webinar, getting the latest information, public health information, business resources out to the community. And I encourage your viewers to go to mynevadacounty.com, look up at the top on the left, there's a bright red button for COVID. Click on that. That'll bring you to a page. You'll see business resources. Go to that page, sign up for our newsletter so that you get it, and you'll get information, and you'll also get notice of the upcoming meetings. That is where information is getting out. The biggest challenge is getting information out. So if people will go to that website, sign up for that listserv, you're only going to get email that are for businesses. So that's first. So one of the examples of information that people would get is that the county OES, in partnership with Cal OES, is offering no cost PPE, that's personal protective equipment for small businesses, no charge. This is mask and hand sanitizer. You can apply online through that same website. And there's pickup locations. Once you submit your application, you can go pick it up at the Grass Valley Chamber of Commerce, the Nevada County Contractors Association, Penn Valley Chamber of Commerce, Truckee Chamber of Commerce. There's 2 or 3 other locations as well. So go to the website, mynevadacounty.com, click COVID, click business resources, sign up there, free PPE. That's always useful. The big news is for restaurants. We all know that restaurants have been hit extremely hard because if they're, those who committed to helping reduce the spread of the infection either had no indoor dining or very limited indoor dining, depending on the tier. So the federal government recognizes that. The Small Business Administration, SBA, has created a restaurant revitalization fund. That is a national fund. It will make restaurants whole for their losses up to $5 million. But it's until funds run out. And so that portal opened today at 9 this morning, and it will continue basically until funds are exhausted. So we are recommending that people register for their account in advance, or at this point now, restaurants.sba.gov. There's more information also at sba.gov/restaurants. Either URL will work, and get in there and start getting their material. Many business people are not experts at grant writing and sometimes get a little overwhelmed by these portals. The county is in partnership with the Sierra Business Council. The Sierra Businesses Small Business Development Center, SBDC, is local, has free counselors who are skilled at navigating these websites and will help your business. So get in there, log in, get your application. But if you find yourself running into any challenges, contact the Sierra Business Council's Small Business Development Center, and that URL is sierrasbdc.com. So these are important links. And if you're a restaurant owner and you haven't already signed up, you probably have heard about this, and I'm sure you're way ahead of the game. But if you're just hearing it now, get on your computer and start that application process, because this is something that is really something that is going to help restaurants come out of this. For those who get through, it'll make a big difference. And we will see more of these grants coming from the state, coming from the federal government. And again, the county's role is to connect you to that information. We have a contract with the Sierra Business Council to provide, one-on-one counseling and coaching. So let's make this happen. We've come through a lot. Let's rebuild, let's recover, let's make sure we have greater resilience going into the future.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you for sharing all that information with us.
It was a lot.
There's a bunch there, but yeah, all of it is great information, all these incredible resources for our community, our restaurants, and everybody. Anything else that you'd like to add at this point?
No, I think I've given you plenty for today, and always happy to talk to you and get information out to your viewers. So thank you for the service you're providing our community.
Well, thank you for taking the time to join us today and share all of your knowledge.
All right, thank you.